Hello everyone, good evening. Hi Sharmilee, hi Devki Nandini. How are you guys?
Hi, Shivani. We're good.
Hi,
How are you,
Shivani.
Shamini? How are you,
I'm good.
Shivani?
I'm good.
We're good. Okay, so all set. Let's begin.
Let's go
All
ahead.
right. Okay. Good evening to the audience. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Shivani. I head the marketing team at Coditas, and I will be your host for today's session on UX writing. As the speakers, we have with us Sharmilee Sarkar, UX writer at Coditas, and our guest speaker, Devki Nandini Narayan, a strategic experience designer at DesignBot, a top notch UI UX school headquartered in Bangalore. I will leave the further introduction of the speakers to themselves. For those of you who don't know Coditas, we are a UX focused software engineering company based in Pune. We help product companies across the globe in building and running cutting edge digital business models. And we are extremely proud to share that we are now a certified great place to work. To know us better and for some amazing content, do follow us on our social media channels. We are very active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Also, do subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you are notified about our next webinar. If you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat section. We will be taking them up towards the end of the session. That's it from my side. Ladies, over to you.
Thank you, Shivani. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. And hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar of UX Writing, Designing Better Experiences with Words. We are really excited. We have a lot of content that we want to share with you. But before we jump right into it, let me introduce myself a little. Hi, I am Sharmilee Sarkar. I am a UX writer at Coditas. I have been in the content industry full time for more than 5 years now. I have worked as a content developer, content writer, script writer, associate director, and now I've joined the design vertical as a UX writer. And we have Devki Nandini today, who is going to share this conversation with me. Thank you so much, Devki, for being here. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm super excited for this conversation. It's fine, right? Okay. Yeah. So, hi, everyone. I'm Devki Nandini. Let me give you a little background of myself for context. I'm currently living in Bangalore and I'm freelancing. So, I'm freelancing as a growth hacker for Design Board, which is a UI UX school where I host such design talks which help people from the design community. And in fact, this is my first time as a speaker, so I hope I can provide some solid value through our conversation. And Sharmili is here, so I'm not too worried about it. And we've also been hosting a few sessions with ADP List as well, so that's been great. I've been talking to some really cool people from the industry, which I think otherwise I wouldn't really have got a chance. And other than that, I am also working as a strategic experience designer for this US based fintech app, which I will be talking about quite a bit during the presentation. And fun fact, before entering this field, I actually did my fashion design from NAFA, Singapore. And other than that, I think when it comes to hobbies, I absolutely love playing sports, and that's me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the screen with me. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Should we
Shivani.
Yep, the presentation is now live.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shivani.
Pleasure.
Okay, so welcome again to all of you. Welcome to the webinar of UX writing. We'll be discussing quite a few topics today. We'll be covering what is UX writing exactly, how does a good copy helps build experiences, how to come up with a good copy, and how you can validate your copies once you know how to write a good copy, and then how you can integrate those the styles and the techniques in your design, right? And then Nandini, would you like to add anything else in this?
Yeah, so I'd just like to say that we'll be talking about UX writing from two essential perspectives that influence copy the most on an app or a website. So, one being a UX writer, which is Sharmilee, who is completely dedicated to structuring the words and copy on every single screen. And the intention purely is to create the best experience for the user. And the second one being from a user experience designer perspective, which would be me. And I'd be responsible for doing justice to that copy, which is just handed over to me. So, how I can do that is by understanding the user psychology, the tone of the copy that's intended, and figure out the most strategic placement of that copy on the screen. So, both are very interconnected, and I think we will see how exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. So let's jump right into it. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so what is UX writing? I think that UX writing is fairly new to this field, and it's important to address its importance in design, which was not so couple of years back. So, what is UX writing? UX writing, if you were to boil it down to it, explains the user experience writing. So, basically, any form of content, the art of crafting content that is there to aid the user's experience, to enhance their experience over using the product or an application or a platform. That is UX writing. So a simple example could be right now you're watching this webinar maybe on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook, right? So right now you're the user and you're interacting with the product, that is the YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook, right? So all the content that you see on top of your screen right now is the work of a UX writer, right? And it's important to address that in order to create a great user experience, it's important to balance both of these arenas, right? You can't have a good user experience with just a great design and a trashy copy, or you can't have a user experience with a great copy and a trashy design, right? So both these things need to go hand in hand in order to give the users the best of their experience. So that is UX writing. So just like a designer designs, right? A user picks the right font, right layout, the spacing, line height, and everything to enhance the user's experience. Similarly, a UX writer designs with words, designs with content, right? So, UX writing is a practice of researching, crafting, and then testing the UI copy that guides the user within a product and helps them interact with the product. That is UX writing. So basically, you can think of UX writing, UX copy as a bridge that lessens the gap between the product and the user, right? Without any copy, there won't be any communication between the product and the user, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And
So
I think it's sorry, yeah, like how you were mentioning, right? Like I think it's even more important now because since everything most we rely on the online platform right now, it's no more the human emotions that they can really see on a screen. So I think
mm,
the words make up or they do justice to what we exactly are trying to communicate.
yes,
So it's
they are actually the building blocks of communication, right?
yes,
So yeah. So if you were to ask me what are the tasks of a UX writer, it can go beyond beyond just the crafting copy. So it has a few areas. So it can reach to the researching part. That is the before we start designing the content, there is a bit of research that goes into it. We try to find ways to create guidelines, we research a bit, and then we try to understand the product, and then we there is this crafting phase where we craft the content, So basically, for any application, it can be success messages, toast messages, warning messages, um, notifications, headers, basically any piece of content that is there on top of the screen that comes under the task of a UX writer. And it's not that that you get a screen, you get a prototype, and then you just shove some words there, and then you're done for the day, right? There is this testing phase as well. So some pieces of the content might not work as well as you have thought of earlier. So that goes back into the loop. Then again, you
Yeah.
have to research and then craft. So basically, the tasks of a UX writer consists of all these phases. But yes, if you were to ask me, any piece of content that is there on top of the screen is the work of a UX writer.
Yeah.
So this is a very interesting graph, a survey that was taken up by the Nielsen Norman Group, and they showed the 100-year view of user experience. So, initially, when humans started interacting with technology, people didn't really care much about the experience that the users were having, right? But later on, when the designers came into into this arena, and they said that, you know what, experiences are important. That's why users are leaving you, right? And that's how user experience came into being. And right now, since we are interacting with products so much, this field, this profession is going to soar heights in the coming years. So they mentioned that, the UX profession is expected to grow from the current 1 million people to 100 million people. That is the growth factor of 100, right? So it's a very interesting fact. So okay, moving on. This was the survey taken up by the UX Writing Hub, and they found out that there are different titles. There are different types of writers in the tech community. So we have technical writers, we have content designers, we have UX writers, right? So these are the, I would say, a different name for almost like the designations, they overlap, but yes, these are the most popular writers in tech. So if you are thinking of hopping onto this platform, do so. It's a high time, right? Now
Yeah.
we know about what UX writing is. um, what does it do, right? Why does it matter? I read an article, and there they emphasized more on the importance of design, and they said that, you know what, there will be a day where uh, no more copy will be needed. Design
Oh,
will suffice everything, right? So that just bewildered me a little, because if you think of of an application without any copy, it seems unimaginable, right? Because we don't
yeah.
understand the importance of copies, right? So let's look into some of the examples that why does UX copy matter. So every time you design a product, you launch a product, right? Your users interact with the product, and every time they face a difficulty, they don't understand, they have problems completing their journey or reaching their goal, they act like
Yeah.
this is me every time I download a new application and I don't know what they're saying, what I need to do next, right? So it's the similar emotion. UX copy matters. It matters because we want to avoid confusion. You see the example right here. It's an error message. Could not
Fine.
copy files because no,
No. Okay.
right? So
Right.
it creates a bit of confusion because the user doesn't know. Okay, this is an error message. What do I need to do next? What do I have to do? What is the problem, right? So every
Yeah.
time a user faces these kind of confusions, the user are going to hop back. They are not going to come back, right?
Exactly.
UX copy matters because we want to avoid bad experiences. See the example. It's some online death certificate portal, and see the text there. The person listed on the death certificate is myself, someone else. Right? It's it's not a pleasant experience, to be honest. So that is why UX writing is important, because Words are the only thing, as you mentioned earlier, words are the only thing that we can see while we are interacting with a machine, right?
Exactly.
That is why
And
you
like it just can't be only practical. So I feel before there was a point where people didn't even know the importance of a designer on a team, right? They said
yes,
if no shade to developers, we absolutely need you guys. But at one point, the thinking was the developers can make the app work. So why do we need a
yes,
designer? Same way,
yes,
a
yes,
designer now can design the app. Why do we need a writer? So I think I'm glad that we are having this conversation because more people need to know the importance of this. And
right,
if
right.
just a designer and you think from maybe a practical perspective or like the aesthetic perspective of having a text and then probably two call to action buttons to choose from, but the call to action buttons content can't be who's this death certificate for myself or someone else. So I think
Someone
that's
else.
what we're trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the question is, can we do without words? Absolutely not, right? Imagine hopping onto, Amazon. You want to buy a pair of earphones or something, and then you see this. Because why? Because you wish there were no words, only designs. So you are not going to navigate through the whole process, right? It becomes very difficult. Why words are important? Because words create worlds. They are the basic building blocks of communication, right? That is why they are important. Now let's look into this example. So this is the application Flash application, and this is how they uh, tried marketing their application. You see, just words, right? Just words, no fancy photo shoots or no fancy videos or ads or anything, just words. This shows the power of words and how they can be used. If you know how to use them, you can use them in a good way to transfer a very powerful message to the users, and it reaches the end users without any hindrance, right? So basically, writing is like designing. Your words are building someone's experiences. It's not just mere words when you are a UX writer, right? So your words are building someone's experience. You can't create most of the interface experiences without words, just like the example we saw of the Amazon page. So every word enhances the user's understanding, feeling, and outcome in their journeys. Hence, writing is definitely important. Now let's talk about how does a good copy help build experiences. Devki,
Yeah.
over to you.
Thank you, Sharmili. I think you did a great job telling what UX writing is and why it is important. Now let's see, how a good
How?
copy actually helps build the experience. So next slide, please. Okay. So here I've taken a screenshot of Mailchimp. Let's go and dissect this example. So this is a create account page on Mailchimp. So Mailchimp is a marketing automation platform for those of you who are not aware of the platform. So when we get to the create a password section, right? What's the first thing that you notice here? I know there's a slight lag, so I'm not sure if I can get into the comments yet. So Sharmili, what do you think is the first thing we notice on this page
I
in
think
the password?
yeah. Every time you so suppose if I'm entering a password and then the copy is the instruction at the bottom, it grays out to it kind of hints that I have chosen the I'm going in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I want to highlight here. So the first thing that we notice is that all the requirements to create a powerful password is given right there
Hmm.
upfront. We don't have to think what it is. So this immediately avoids two things. So it doesn't have ambiguity and it helps with recall versus recognition as well. So, how it's not ambiguous is that you don't have to sit and break your head thinking of a password and then realize that it doesn't match the criteria.
Yeah,
Right? And recall versus recognition is that you don't have to really, read a set of instructions in a pop-up. You know how we usually have a pop-up and we click on it and then it says what are the requirements. So we don't
yeah,
have to do
yeah,
that, close it, and then memorize it while creating the password. You have it right there and you can refer to it whenever you want, right? And I
right, yeah,
think one more thing is it reinforces the pattern also for creating a really good secure password, be it on any
mm-hmm.
platform. So I think that's great. And why this copy is so impactful, like I want to highlight the words over here. So there are three reasons that I figured out here. One thing is the copy is very clear and concise, I think, which Sharmini will talk about later. So here it's like there is no room for you to interpret it in any other way. Look at the words it says. It says minimum one it's not very clear. One uppercase character, one number. So there's no room for any other sort of interpretation. And then second is it gives you immediate feedback, like how you mentioned, right?
Yeah,
So this I want to highlight complies with the heuristic principle of visibility of system status, right? So that basically says keep the users informed through constant feedback loops. So, when you match a criteria, it goes to the inactive state, the gray state, and that's similar to like a progress bar. And then, third, very important thing here is it does not instill fear in the user. Like, very easily, they could have done two things here, made the field red. We've seen,
yeah,
will indicate error messages in red, blaring red. And they could have also changed the copy to indicate the error, say something like the password is incorrect or it's not a secure password. So, like, the idea of a password is to provide security. And if you provide messages like that, that would do the opposite. So, I think it's great to give error messages, but it's even better to avoid the errors in the first place. Make it the design in such a way that the user avoids the errors. So that's about this MailChimp example. Next slide. Right. So empathetic copy is human like experience. So there is no correlation between Slack and doing exercise. It says remember to get up and stretch once in a while, right? Like, why should Slack do that? But why do they have this micro copy? It is to make the experience of the user on their platform more human. So Slack is using a messaging tool for working. I mean, Slack is used as a messaging tool, right, for working in your workplace. And it's assumed that people work long hours and they forget to take care of their health. So by telling the user to get up and stretch once in a while, Slack makes a connect with the user on an
connect with the
emotional level.
user, right?
Yeah. So this is very subtle, yet it's not such a small hook to bring the user back to your platform.
Yeah,
Next one. Okay, so good copy equals more users. So here in this example, Maggie, who is a senior UX writer, she took this example in Google I/O Dev conference to show the importance of a UX writer or a copy on a product team, right? So on a product. So why do you think the second screenshot with check availability got 17% more engagement as compared to book a room on the first screenshot? It is essentially because, like, they mean the same thing, right? Check
yeah,
availability and they're trying to convey the same thing. But once we click enter, they display the same information, right? But the words make such a huge difference here, and I'll tell you why. That is like the engagement in the second check availability is more because a huge number of users, they felt if they enter the dates and click on book a room in the first example, they felt it would directly end up booking a room.
mm,
They felt that like there was no way to check the availability, and hence they refrained from performing the intended action on that screen. Whereas when you click on check availability, it's very direct and it explains the result of the action, right? That you get to see the availability of rooms and not directly book a room. So that's how the engagement increased because of good choice of words. Okay, awesome. Let's play this clip.
May I help you?
We'll be asking the questions, old man. Who are you?
You.
No, not me, you.
Yes, I am you.
Just answer the damn questions. Who are you?
I have told you.
Are you deaf?
No, you is blind.
I'm not blind, you blind.
That is what I just said.
You just said what?
I did not say what. I said you.
That's what I'm asking you.
And you is answering.
Shut up. You.
Yes?
Not you, him.
Yeah. So I think most of you may know what this movie is, but guess the movie. Any idea, Sharmilee? Shivani, you can pitch in as well. Have you watched this movie before?
Sorry, no, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
But
What about
we are getting comments. Yes, they say rush hour.
Yes, correct. It's Rush Hour 3, and it's the famous I am you scene, right? So, any idea what we're going to talk about? Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to talk about. So, this is a conversation between Carter and Master Yu. And clearly, from this clip, we've seen they can't understand each other. And in fact, it ends up looking like Master Yu is mocking Carter, right? Saying he is blind. But that's not the case here, right? Like he's simply trying to reply to the questions, in fact, very earnestly. So, in this clip here, because they've been raised in different countries probably and they don't speak the same language, Carter had no clue that you in fact is a legit name from where Master You comes, right? So what I'm trying to say here is the same word can mean different things in different languages and sometimes it can be offensive as well. So if you're designing for a global app, say with more than one language, it's important you do your research and see, if your copy and its translations mean the same and that there's no scope for any sort of misinterpretation. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, I want to highlight the importance of context and tone here with this example that I've come up with. So let's take the English phrase send me money in this example, and when translated to Spanish, there are two versions for the same phrase depending on the context. I think this is similar to how in India we have like how you were mentioning, Sharmili. Do you want to say that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it happens to most of us because we are always traveling from state to state. So I remember I was 10, 11 years old, and then every time I was living in Chennai at that time, and every time I used to buy groceries, some vegetables, I used to say something and I used to get something else, right? And at that point of time, this language barrier, that, like, we are too young to understand that, right? But now we understand that, when you are having a conversation, uh, conversation is the only building block, right? When you're talking to someone, like for example right now we are talking, right? So it's important to keep those building blocks in place. So every time, just the example that you showed us, that just because we are born and brought up in different parts of the world, and we have different languages, we speak differently, we think differently, and then we talk differently, right? It can have a huge impact, right? And yeah, I think the example that you are trying to show here, it matches what we face on a daily basis, right? Please
Exactly.
go ahead.
Yeah. So what I want to say here is, in context one, it says I can't pay my tuition until my parents send me money. Here, the Spanish term uses enviar dinero, right? And in the second context, it says our daughters who live in the United States send me money every month. And here, mandar dinero is used. So it's essentially send me money, but it's completely different words in different contexts when it comes to another language. So thankfully here, both the phrases envía dinero and manda dinero, they consist of two words each, which is very similar to the space that send me money would occupy on a screen. But in case there is a context three, where the Spanish translation goes up to say 7 to 8 words, right? While the English phrase has only 3 words. Imagine then the design would become an issue while translating. You would have given this much space, but if it's this much, then you have to adjust the spacing, line height, everything. So it
Right,
might
right.
go out of the box, or it might go to the next line, and it might ruin the look of the design. So we must keep both the context and tone in mind, but also not compromise on the design, which would bring us to the next topic about the length of the copy, right? Yeah, let's look at the example of Netflix here. So when translating, right, the context and tone of the copy matter as well. So in the example here, the English on the example here, let's look at the first one. The first one, the English text is "Don't miss out," and in German, I'm sorry, I can't read that, but that's six words long, right? So when we are writing copy for a multiple language app, such as Netflix, we need to keep in mind the length of the word or the sentence. So statistics show that when translating to other languages from English, the translated text could be up to 40% larger than the English text. So the word here, don't miss out, it sits perfectly in that card design with the image, the title, the body. There's a primary CTA, secondary CTA, everything fits in. But what happens when we translate that to the German one? The heading text goes out of bounds. And in this case, would you think it is wise to just put those ellipses, the dot, 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 instead of showing the complete text? I don't think it's uh, a good idea to do that at all, because imagine if in the English screen you just write "don't miss" and then dot, 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 right? Like, what will the user understand? Don't miss the deadline, don't miss the bus. It's absolutely ambiguous. So there isn't context, and it's open to misinterpretation. So to avoid ambiguity and misinterpretation, especially for a platform like Netflix, which has to be translated in 26 different languages, you can end up with 26 different problems which you have to resolve, right? So while designing, you need to keep in mind and accordingly design the copy first, and then figure out the accurate placement of it on the screen, and then finally design the screens. Yeah. Next.
Right.
So the
Okay. So right now we have learned a lot about what UX writing is, why it is important, why it is important to keep in mind, that content is necessary, right? For design. Design alone cannot suffice and help the users have best of experience, right? So let's look into how you can come up with a good copy with simple steps. So, how to come up with a good copy, right? It's just a piece of cake. You just have to make sure that you remember these basic C's of UX writing. The basic thumb rule of UX writing has always been clear, concise, and useful text. So, basically, you have to make sure that your copies are clear, they are shorter, concise, and they are helpful, right? These are the most extended version of the same thing. And let's look into each of these sections slide by slide. Okay, so number one, in order to come up with a good copy, you need to make sure that your copies are clear, because clarity banishes confusion. Great writing, like great design, is invisible. You can see the example on the right hand side. This is a pop-up which shows the copy as is this shipping to the USA or Canada? Cancel, no. Okay, yes, right? So the copy is not clear. It is still ambiguous. The user doesn't know what to do next, right? So this is a complete no-no in UX writing. You have to make sure that your copies are very clear and very to the point so that the user understand it in order to go ahead and take the next action, right? Number two, concise. We all are running out of time. Nobody has so much of time to, read through every bit of text that is on top of the screen.
Yeah.
That's why they say that scanning is the new reading, right? So whatever you are writing, just make sure that your copies are short, right? You can see the example on the right hand side. It says click to open the chatbot and one of our representatives will be with you shortly. Now there's nothing wrong with this copy, but it can also be written as got a question about what we do, let's chat. So it's boiling down the whole text, but it's not leaving out any information, right? So we have to make sure that our copies are concise, keep it short and sweet, help users achieve goals without thinking too hard. Because when a user has to think too hard, if a user has to read through every bit of text and the texts are I don't know, maybe 500 or 600 words long, they're probably going to leave that site, right? So try not to do that. So number one is clear. Number two is concise.
I'd
Number
like to
three,
add something in concise.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So something very crucial. So I recently became very active on Twitter. I'm trying to work my way around, interact with designers a little bit more, challenge different thoughts. So I had my recent conversation with Matthew, who is a micro copy specialist, and he's also here in the event. So hi, Matthew. So, from the conversations, I've come to realize that having a specific character count for your microcopy can make your life much easier and the life of your users. Probably not your life because you might have to think a little bit more, but for the users, it's better, right? So, the more concise the copy, the more chances of it being precise and cutting out all the flares. Like the word count obviously might vary when it comes to different languages, but having one in place would be a great tool to work with and it'll help you keep it short and sweet. So yeah, I
Right.
just want to add that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, our copies need to be concise as well. Number three, our copies need to be constructive. Make use of every bit of copy that is there on top of the screen, right? You can see the example here. It's the screen from MailChimp. So, every time you launch a campaign, you get the screen. You see every piece of content. So prepare for launch. You are about to send a campaign to 100 subscribers. Send now, cancel. This is your moment of glory. They have used the content strategically. They have not just placed the content just so it was looking good, right? So that is why writing constructive copy is really, really important, right? The screen effectively informs the user of the next step. So you get all the details and you are not lagging behind as a user. So number three is make sure that your copies are constructive. Number four, conversational. We are not living in a world where we would like to talk to a robot, right? You can see the example. You have violated the primary key, right? Every time you're writing a piece of copy for a product, just make sure that it sounds like a human, right? The pro tip would be, of course, every time you write a piece of copy, read it out loud. If it sounds like a robot, it's probably time to edit. Imagine your, personal assistants, Google, Asana, Siri, talking to you and not be able to, imagine one day when you're not going to imagine the experience or love the experience if they can't sing to you, if they can't rap to you, right? They are AI. And we ask them, crack a joke, right? Uh, Tell me a funny story or sing a song to me, right? So that is why it's important to work on the conversational copy, because we as humans, we follow the crowd and we rely on those instincts of ours, right? And it makes the experience more useful, just like the example you showed of Slack, right?
Mhm.
It's similar to that. So make sure that your copies are conversational, it doesn't sound like a robot.
Yeah.
Next is be consistent. So take the straight route, okay? Try not to use synonymous words on every other screen, because what it does is it confuses the users. And once they are confused, they are going to go back. So you can see the example here. You are about to remove this activity code from the system, and then in CTAs, they say delete and cancel. Instead of that, they could have written, you're about to remove this activity code from the system. Yes, remove, cancel, right? Straight as that. So be consistent. If you're choosing some words, try to use those across the screens. It's going to
Yeah.
help the users a lot.
Yeah.
Now, moving on. Now we know, okay, so now we know the basic steps of how you can come up with a good copy. Right now, there are certain areas that we need to be careful about while coming up with copies. And this brings up the question that how to choose the right words. Now I know how to choose how to write a copy, right? But how do I choose the right words? So for example, just because I said that you need to write a conversational copy, does that mean, if I'm writing for a product, does that mean I can be sarcastic with my user any point of time? Does that mean I can use curse word at any point of time? Because I'm trying to be conversational, right? That doesn't work like that, right? Because when you're dealing with users, you have to make sure that you are choosing the right words to convey the right message, right? So there are three aspects to choosing the right words. These are usable, useful, and responsible. That is, when you're choosing the words that you're choosing must be usable, they need to be useful, and again, they need to be responsible. Okay. Number one, for example, the example of usable words will be, suppose if you're writing a copy, ask yourself, is the copy easy to read? Right? Are the words a bit tricky to read or understand? Ask yourself these questions. You can see the example on the right hand side. It's the screen from Adobe Creative Cloud, and this is their older copy, and this is their updated version of the copy. See how they have they have asked the users to do certain action, right? So not finding what you're looking for, tap on the search icon next to your profile picture. It's similar to, suppose if you are house hunting and you ask a random stranger, okay, where is this place? And they tell you, go straight and then go left and then go right, right? It it expands the process. It's not helping the user in that way, right? So instead of that, what they have done, they have reduced the copy to use search to find more tutorials, right? And they have hyperlinked the search action, search word.
That's
So the
very
user
true.
knows, right. So the user knows that if I hit on search, I can directly get redirected to the search bar, right? And now the task of user has come down. Right. So make writing usable through plain language. Because when we are working for products, these products are going to be used across different literary background people, people belonging to different culture or ethnicities or disabilities, right? So as writers, we need to make sure that we are using words that is understandable across these arenas, and we have to choose a language that transcends all these barriers, right?
Plus, I think one more important thing, sorry, in the previous slide, is that people are also using this with a different mindsets and in different environments. Say, I'm really busy and I'm trying to find something quickly. And if it says that there's nothing, do you not find what you're looking for? Then go to the search icon. So now again, I have to search for the search icon.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
keep all of that in mind, the different scenarios your users. So I think personas would help in this case. So frame 3 4 different personas which are very different from each other in terms of their backgrounds and the environment they're in and the task they're trying to achieve, and that would also help in coming up with the right words and the right flow
Right,
for the
right. So we can choose copies that will suffice the needs of all these three
yeah,
users across personas, right?
correct.
Okay. Next, we have useful words. We have to make sure that the words we are choosing are useful enough, right? So ask yourself that whatever you're writing, is it something that people would want to do? Does it add value to their experience? I know, as of me, if you ask me, I never read any terms and conditions page. I don't know how many people read it, but it's important, right? But then again, all of us are in hurry, right? This is an example which I really like. This is Pinterest's terms and conditions page. So this is the terms and conditions useful text, the usual text, and then they have added an extra blurb at the end, right? So they have compressed all the information that is there on the top, and they have added that blurb at the bottom. What it does is, if I'm in a hurry, if I'm a lazy reader, it would help me. I can read these 3 4 lines and I can understand this thick language as well, right? So this is how you can make sure that your words are being useful, right? You can choose.
Yeah.
This is how you can choose words.
I think
Next.
people have been doing this for a very long time. In our books, we have summaries, like a gist
Yeah,
of the
yeah,
whole.
yeah.
So it's the same principle used here as well.
Right, right. I think it's necessary that it's when we think of designing experience, these are the simpler things that I think we all have seen since childhood that we can incorporate here now.
Absolutely.
Now, next is responsible words. This is very interesting. So ask yourself, when you're writing a copy, ask yourself that can the words you're designing be misused in some way? Are they truthful? Are they inclusive? Right? Are they being used to deceive the users? Confirm shaming, I think, is widely used in copywriting world, where a user is asked to sign up, and then they have this pop-up which asks them to add their email address, and they have very beautiful bright CTAs, and then the opt-out option that they have is something which is very unethical and immoral, right? So what it does is it shames the users. And there was this study, psychology study, which showcased that if you shame your users, right, no matter how educated they are, 70% of them are going to add their email IDs here, just so they don't have to click on this, right? So this is the impact that we are giving. And of course it works in some way. That is why it is being used, it is widely used. But we have to ask those questions to ourselves as UX writers and UX designers, that is it ethical enough? Is it good? Is it moral, right? So we have to be very careful while choosing the words. Even if you think from a designer's perspective, right? The designer who designed this chose to place the content in such a way so that he or she can get more sales, right? So we have to be very responsible when it
Right.
comes to that.
One very famous example we would have seen would be in all these pop-up ads where it's very common, you would have seen this everywhere, where you can't find the close the pop-up button. Somewhere in some corner, absolutely minuscule, and it does the job, but the user is frustrated, right, on your platform. You don't want that. So it comes down to ethics, but more so the user experience at the end of the day. Okay. So this is my beautiful drawing that I did. Let's talk about it. So right out of the bat, from the information that's given to you on this screen, which cereal box would you buy?
Serial
Will you
B.
want to cereal B, right? And I would do the same thing, right? I would have picked cereal B as well. But and most probably all of you guys would have taken the cereal B as well, simply because it says 80% sugar free. And all of us are super health conscious, I'm assuming. And even if we are not, we would still go for that, right? And if you really think about it, 20% sugar content and 80% sugar free essentially mean the exact same thing. But
Yeah.
without a second thought, why did we choose cereal B? It's just that saying 80% sugar free sounds like a more healthy option, right? And this is something that's called as the framing effect. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, what is framing effect? It is a cognitive bias that we have where we perceive the same outcome but in different ways, right? And we make a decision also based on that. And we don't even care to see what the actual facts are. We just look at the information presented to us and we make an immediate quick decision, right? We don't have hours to spend in the shopping mall and all of that, in the department stores. So do you see how powerful a tool word is, like words are, right? As a UX writer, you can literally manipulate the perception of something just from the way you phrase it or frame it. That's pretty scary, I think, right? But it doesn't have to be, because if we are responsible enough, a designer, to use it for the right purpose, then it's not scary at all. So yeah, let's look at some of the examples of framing positive and negative sentences or words. So these are some of the examples that I came across on an article. So let's look at the first one. The first one says you have 10% chance of dying during the operation. And it also means you have 90% chance of surviving it, right? The second one says don't ruin your once in a lifetime wedding with a not so perfect gown. Whereas it can also be phrased as get the perfect wedding gown for your big day. And the third one is stop wasting money and time on marketing strategies that drive clicks but no leads, which can also be phrased as save money, time, and headache with marketing strategies that double your ROI. This is actual text that is there on a marketing platform. So you see how negative framing, it creates an urgency which may serve your purpose, but also creates a very negative impact on the user's minds. It creates tension and eventually a not so great user experience. So instead of using words like dying, ruin, waste, try using words like surviving and going. So, next slide, please. So, basically, what I'm trying to say is we need to realize the scale and the impact we are capable of creating, and we need to be responsible enough when we have so much power. Yeah, next slide. Okay, so we have come to how we can validate our copy, right? We've seen how to come up with a good copy. Sharmilee told us how exactly it helps in building experiences. But how do we know if the copy we have come up with makes the cut or not? So let's see how we can validate our copy. Next slide, please. Sharmilee? Okay, can you guys guess the word that fills in this blank? Please, Sharmili, Shivani, all of you.
Now I
I would
know the
love to be
answer.
saying as well, but are there any guesses in the audience yet?
Not yet.
Okay. So guess the word that fills in the blank, whatever you can think of. I know you know the answer, but I still want to know the words.
Missing word. Can you guess
Okay,
the missing word?
we are
Right.
getting in comments for this. Ankit says
Right
buzz,
word.
buzzword,
It
correct
is
word,
buzzword.
right word. Yeah, missing word. We are
Right. Never thought of so many other words, but as we can see, there are so many words that can fill in this blank, right? And it still makes perfect sense. So, like you said, the word that I removed here is missing. Can you guess the missing word in the sentence? So, this takes me to something called a close test. So, the purpose of this test is to see if there are misinterpretations of copy and accordingly change it. As simple as that. So, I'll tell you how exactly that's done. So, what you do is you take any paragraph from your app or a website and give the user the context, right? So I'll take the example of a fintech app since I'm working on one. And let's say it's for the Indian audience. Okay. So it's the bank transfer page, and the paragraph explains how a bank transfer is done. So you take a screenshot and you remove every fourth or fifth word and replace it with a blank. So now you ask your users to fill these blanks in. They have the context, which is bank transfer. So, it should be fairly easy if your copy is clear and concise for them to fill in the blanks. So, if the user gets at least 60% of the paragraph correct, right? 60% of the whole paragraph, then your copy is fairly good. But if it's lesser than 40%, you either need to change the words, or you need to rephrase the sentence, or from a design perspective, you can provide a help button, or a customer service number to help guide the user, because they need more assistance. They don't understand the paragraph. So through this test, we can also see the words your audience would rather use as compared to the words that you chose to describe that particular action or that particular feature. So, for example, if I frame a sentence saying, you can transfer money to your friends. So, if most of my audience uses the word, say, you can also say send money or give money. It doesn't have to be transfer money. So, depending on your target audience, right? If most of them have used the word send money, then I can do the same thing for my copy as well. Like I can replace the transfer word with send. So, this would help increase the number of clicks, as your users will feel more comfortable in taking that particular action because they know exactly what will happen when they click on that call to action or whatever that paragraph does, right? So that's pretty much the idea of a close test. Next slide, please. Right. So this is a screenshot of Binance that I took, and I have taken out every fourth or fifth word from here. You could quickly try and see if you can fill any of the blanks. I know I'm giving a lot of assignments on this presentation, but try your shot at it. Sharmilee, you want to give it a shot?
I feel
There are
like a
no
kid
right
again,
or
like the
wrong.
fill in the blanks, comprehension tests, fill in the
Yeah.
blanks.
So it says build your crypto portfolio. So we know that this screenshot is explaining what Binance does. So it says start your first dash with these easy dash. Any idea what comes here?
Should it be trade first portfolio or
Yeah,
trade?
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. These
It's easy steps. It should be easy steps, right?
exactly, yeah. So from the first line itself, you can see that probably the first blank has two, three different words that can fill in, and the second one is with these easy steps. So you guys in the audience can try and figure that out as well. But now I shall reveal what the words are. Please go to the next slide. Right. So it says start your first trade with these easy steps. So you basically get the idea of how this is done. So which is why I've provided this example. Okay. Can we go to the next one, please? Okay. Can you guess what this next test is called? I think it's pretty straightforward. Is there anyone in the audience giving the answers? I really wish I can see that right now.
not yet.
Okay. Do you want to guess, Shivani? I think Sharmili knows. So, any idea what this test would be called?
The name of the test, is it?
Yeah, basically, what's happening in that picture right now? It's just a
Like,
highlighter test. I'll make it easy for you.
yeah, oh yeah. Scanning, Rajeshri says scanning.
Right. Yeah, that's the idea behind the highlighter test. That's right. So the purpose of this test is to glance through the sentences that the users are not very clear about, and also the sentences that makes perfect sense. That's basically validating your copy. You want to know what makes sense as well. So this is how you conduct one. You take a printout of the page with some content, like, or take a screenshot, whatever it is, and you share this with your participants, right? And then you ask your participants to highlight the content which they understand in green. So this way, the content that you don't have to change, or you shouldn't change. change rather. And then second is you ask your participants to highlight the content which they're not very certain of in orange. We don't want to use red again because that gives us a negative feedback. So let's use orange here. And once the activity is complete, you have to scan through your orange parts, like how you mentioned in the audience. So ask participants follow up questions regarding the orange parts to improve your copy. So ask them what is it that they don't understand in this, or rather ask them what did they think is the action that they have to perform after reading that copy, which might be wrong, which is why they've highlighted it in orange. So that's the thought behind the highlighter test. And then the next one, think there's a lag. Okay, right. So, who thought the bar exam was about making cocktails? And who thought comprehension surveys was only for an English exam? Or the rest of our validation tests. So we can use comprehension surveys to validate our copy as a UX writer as well. So how that is done is you first have to create a survey form, and we have platform like SurveyMonkey for that. And here you have to attach a screenshot of a page or from your website or app, which has a page title, which has a body, illustration, and other related content, so that the user has context, right? Because it's just going to be a screenshot. Now you frame a few questions regarding that page. So either ask, it should be regarding the information or the action that's supposed to be done in that section or page. Very similar to how in our English exams we are provided with a paragraph for a 5 marker, and we're asked questions and all the answers are in that paragraph, right? Pretty simple is what we think, but we know it's not. So now you ask the participant to study that page and answer the related questions. And these answers will show you different interpretations of the same content if the copy is not clear, right? And then if there are different interpretations, if there is room for any different misinterpretation, then you have to change the copy accordingly, right? So I have taken an example here in the next slide. Okay, so this is a screenshot from a video calling platform, right? And this has an illustration, it has a title, and it has a body explaining a particular feature here, presuming, right? So, what are the kind of questions that we can take here? Let's look at the screenshot first. It says customize to fit your brand, and it says use your logo, color, image, and domain to highlight your brand during your video calls. Simple. So the kind of questions you can frame for this is you can ask probably what can you customize, because the first line says customize to fit your brand. But if the user knows the context, they should be able to answer what can you customize. So Sharmilee, you want to try and say what do you think you can customize over here?
Customize your logo brand. Like I can
Yeah.
customize. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty much the context is that it is a video calling platform. And what they're trying to say is you can customize to fit your brand, as in you can customize
Yeah.
the video calling, your background to, fit your brand. So here the answer
Fit
would
my
actually
background. Yeah.
correct. So customize your background. And the second question could possibly be how do we allow customization? So here, I think they've written you can use your logo, color, images, and domains. That's how you can actually customize. So in fact, from what we noticed now, what can you customize was something that wasn't very straightforward, right? Like you felt that it could be customizing your logo. So probably here they should have changed the text to say customize your background to fit your brand.
Yeah.
That avoids ambiguity. Absolutely right. So
Right.
the third question is you can probably ask who is this feature most beneficial for? So if your copy has done a good job, then they should be able to answer this as well. So this probably would be beneficial for someone who's starting up their own company, or if it's a personal brand, or if you have an established brand and you still want to grow it, then for anybody who wants to have a brand or make a name or have an identity, then this is for them. So that's pretty much the idea behind all these three different types of tests, and there are many more, but these are the very simple and really fun ones which I thought I should highlight here. Yeah. Next
Okay.
slide.
So now we have learned a lot about what UX writing is, how we can come up with a good copy. Now, you have explained how we can validate those copies, right? Now, let's look into how we can integrate those UX writing in design, because you gave us an example that showed that it's important to integrate UX copy as soon as possible, right? So that
Yeah.
we have a lot of time and space to play around with our designs. So here are a
Right.
few tips that you can use to integrate UX writing in your designs. Number one, say no to lorem ipsum.
Love it.
People who love lorem ipsum are going to leave the chat. I understand that, but the reason behind this is very, very straightforward. You can see the example on the right hand side. The first screen was designed keeping the lorem ipsum in mind, but on the right hand side is the actual copy. So you see what happens is what looks great in lorem ipsum. Suppose you're designing something and it looks great in lorem ipsum, it might not look so when you replace it with a real copy, right? So it's very integral. It's a very important part that you integrate real copy in your UIs as soon as possible, like as early as possible. What it will do is it will make the prototype look more natural. It will help you estimate all the layouts and fonts and elements and everything, right? So you don't have to go back and forth changing the design every time you integrate copy, right? So number one is say no to lorem ipsum. Number two is say no to complex language. We have learned that complex language is a big no no in UX writing. Try to use simple languages as much as possible. You see here, this is a very jumbled up, uh, difficult copy to read. Instead of that, you could simply write that the network connection is lost or something similar, which is more understandable and it's more conversational and easier to read and understand, right? So try not to use complex languages in your design. Try to use more simpler, clear form of words. Number
I
three
think
is
sorry, I think our network also glitched when you said that.
right, right. So did you lost me somewhere?
No, 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 no. No, continue, continue.
Right. Okay. So number three is use numbers. Numbers make content concise. The basic idea behind using numbers is solely because it makes the content look more compact, and also it leaves a lot of room to work around your design, and also it's easier for the users to skim through, right? So numbers are important. Numbers make the content concise and easier for the users to skim. So use numbers. Number four, very important, reflect brand voice and tone. It is very important that every time you're designing and you're integrating copies, it's important to make sure that your copies are not changing by the screen. So if you have a brand voice and tone in place, it'll be easier for you to follow those patterns. So you'll be using similar tone, similar voice across the screens of the product that you're designing, right? So basically the tone of voice, it's the way how brands speak to the audience. So uh, you can say Spotify, take the example of Spotify, or Slack, the example that we just saw. They have a way of talking to their users, right? It's their voice. They use a different tone to convey ideas to the users. And if you have seen it very, very closely, they maintain it throughout their platform, right? That is why it's important to keep a set of brand voice and guidelines in place, so that it helps to follow, same words, speech patterns, and sentence structures across the platform. So this is the example of Skype's brand book, and they have added the words that they like, the words that they don't like to use, how they want to sound to the users, right? This is very helpful when you are trying to come up with copies that is not changing by every screen. Okay, so we have learned a lot, right? We have a few takeaways now. So we have learned about what UX writing is, why it is important, how words can impact your experience, right, throughout your journey. Why words are important, how you can come up with a good copy, and what are the do's and don'ts that you need to keep in mind, right? So basically, simple and sensible content gives creates an awesome user experience, right? You have to follow the basic C's of UX writing when trying to,
Yes.
when you're trying to come up with copies. Keep the do's and don'ts in mind. The example that we showed you, that we need to be very responsible while crafting copies. Write, validate, edit, repeat. So write a copy, validate those, edit them based on that, and then repeat, go back, right? It's not that, as I mentioned earlier, it's not that you get a screen and then you throw pieces of content and then you are done for the day, right? It's a whole
Yeah.
loop, because sometimes we write a copy and then it doesn't fit with the design, we have to change it, and then we again craft a copy, and then the developers say that, it will need these technicalities, can we work something else around it, and then we go back and do this process all over again.
Yeah.
And yeah, Nandini, would you like to add anything else?
Nothing. I think you've pretty much covered everything. And the thing is, if you do not validate and you think it's not important, then you'll be the only user who's very happy with the content you've written, right? Like you should always remember you are not your user, because the decisions you take might be biased. So always validate. If you're not able to bring in a huge group of audience, at least approach 2 to 3 different people, because everybody has a different perspective, right? So you'll be able to guess if, I mean, you'll be able to validate your copy that way. Some other perspective other than your own is very essential when it comes to designing. Yeah, I think rest of it
Right,
you've
right,
covered.
right. Okay. So basically, for now, right now, Coditas is hiring UX writers. So if you guys are interested, there is opening, and please go ahead and fill up. We have this website. We will also be sharing the links in the description. Please go ahead. There are multiple options across verticals. We are hiring across verticals. Please go ahead and send us your resumes. We'll be happy to meet. And yes, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. We are uh, live, and we conduct seminars and webinars, sessions like this. So feel free to come back at us at any time, right? Now, let's take in some questions.
Shivani?
Yep. All right. So, do you guys want me to read out the questions for you?
Sure, if you have anything in place, or we can skim.
Right, I can
Or
see
Do
I can
you
see
want to?
Nisha Jain's question. How do you distinguish between content writer and UX writer? So I
interesting.
would say content writers, content developers, content designers, it's not that different, because when you are writing content, you're always, doing your research, and then you are crafting copies, and you have certain goal in mind, right? When you're writing for content, your audiences are set, right? Your set of users are set. It's just that, well, when you are a content writer, you don't necessarily need to be interacting with designers or uh, stakeholders or developers all the time, right? As a UX writer, you will be going back and forth with your copies. So you'll be interacting a lot with designers, you'll be interacting a lot with the developers, you'll be getting on calls. We have a new feature and this is the flow, and you'll need to understand the product in and out. While as a content writer, you don't necessarily need to understand any product, you're just writing content. But yes, the writing part is similar, research and writing, but other than that there is a bit of technicality if you are a UX writer, because you need to understand the product's technicalities as a whole. So that is it.
Okay.
Next.
I see a question from Karthik asking how UX writing is applicable to improve the user experience of common people, understanding or working with legal documents. These documents may have complicated jargon, and people who are not very familiar with legal domain tend to struggle. Right. So I think this brings us back to the point where we said we can have a quick summary of the whole. I think legal documents, we shouldn't mess with the details. So we have to include all the details as much as possible. But you can have a concise summary where you can phrase it in much more simpler terms for all of your audience to understand what it is. So I think that would be one way to approach it.
Right, okay. Okay, so next is, I think, Palak Hiran. She has asked that if a person is not able to understand an app, how important is it to work on the UX part of the app and how much to work on the UX writing? But first of all, UX writing, we don't necessarily go ahead and write copies. There is an extensive amount of research that goes before we start writing for the product. So there are different types of tests and researches. We come up with personas, we read the users, we create different user personas, and then we start the writing part of it, right? So suppose if we come up with an application where the copies are a bit messed up and they need to change, and then again the research part will be included in that. And the reason that it is important is, just in the webinar we saw that how important words are when it comes to conveying ideas. If you have a product in place and you don't have a proper copy in place, it's not going to work. Your product will be missed out, right? People are going to move away from your product, right? So if a user is unable to understand a product, suppose there is a language barrier, just like the example that we saw, so we work around, we sit together, and then will try to come up with different version of the copies that can work best for those set of users.
Right.
I hope that answers your question, Palak.
So I have another question here. Fazmina is asking, in which stage of UX design process should UX writing be integrated? So I think this is a very crucial question because, like we said, we saw all the problems that we can face when we don't integrate UX writing in the initial stages of designing itself, right? We can see there is a problem with the spacing, there is problem with the length, it's spilling out of the design, and all your design work absolutely goes for waste. So anyway, before we start designing, we have the brand identity in place, we have tone, all of that is set in place, right? So we should be ideally integrating UX writing from the very beginning, because once we have all the content, it's much more easier for us to design as well. But if there is a design and then we try forcing copy in, it might not really do justice to what your product is trying to convey, right? So I would say from the very beginning. Plus, some of the problems is some companies might not actually hire a UX writer, right? Or maybe you're working on a personal project, or you're a single designer, and that time, what would you do without a UX writer, right? So the ideal scenario is for your company to have a UX writer, since we know how important it is. Especially since I'm working on a finance app, I know how my time is split between designing the screens and designing the content as well, because sometimes when it comes to translation, so this is Spanish and English, so I have to, it doubles the amount of thinking for me, the amount of designing, the reiteration, everything. So I think if you're a single designer, it would be better if you yourself start integrating the copy and think of the perfect sentence instead of quickly writing some sentence and sending it off for um, development. So hope I've answered that question.
Right, okay. I'll take up Deepesh Rani's question. He has asked, does the content provided by chatbots fall under UX writing? Just thought of that based on your Slack example. It has a chatbot that reminds us to send Jira updates. Yes, yes, Jira updates. So, yes, Deepesh, every conversation, every chatbot conversation, it falls under UX writing. In fact, the conversations that you have with your Siri or Asana or Google, Alexa, all those are crafted by UX writers. So every conversation that you have, every text that you see, that is the work of a UX writer. I would.
I'm not able to see questions beyond a certain point, but okay. Guys, type in your questions now because I'm able to see the latest ones. Um,
Right.
yeah, so Gulam asks, how do we know if our copy works effectively to various audience? So, like I said, catering to different audience across the globe might be a tricky situation here, and languages also would be even more trickier. But if you want to know if your copy works for your audience or not, best way is to get one target audience from different categories, right? Like if they belong to different geographical locations, or whichever way you all have categorized, get one from each and see if it works or not. So that way, you'll have to do the validation process and find a common ground. If there are three different answers, you need to, that's where you come in, right? As a UX writer, you find a common ground and phrase the perfect copy that works for all. So, yeah.
So basically, we can say that every time we craft a copy, it's not the Bible, right? It's
Yeah.
always going to go back. There is always some room for improvement. Suppose you have come up with a piece of copy, and then you realize that it's not working well with the audience in the usability tests, or in the further validation processes that we take up. So then again, we have to go back, fall back to, we come back to square one, and then we again start crafting copies, right? So
Absolutely.
that's how it works.
And I
I would
also
like to
think,
take, yeah, yeah. Please go ahead.
yeah. I also think if you are a fairly new company and your brand identity also changes, which is very likely to happen as and when you grow and you add new features, you might see that your reach is now to a larger audience, right? And you want to cater to all of them. So if your brand identity changes, then UX copy has to change as well. Otherwise, there's going to be a disconnect between what you're trying to sell and what you're actually saying to the audience. So you shouldn't be shy to reiterate, like Sharmilee mentioned.
Right. Okay, I'll take up Shrey Goswami's question. What is
Yeah.
the sphere of UX writing in India, and does it help if I study UX process and go into it? I already have experience in content writing. See, I there are plenty of people who ask me this question. I have been a content writer. I've been in this arena, so I understand it. It's just that if you have a zeal for writing, you should definitely, like, if you are not someone who doesn't hate, designs, and who doesn't hate collaborating, who doesn't hate the experience of getting exposed to new projects and new experience and reiteration every other time, then I think you should probably consider this role as your best bet, because you're going to be exploring a lot more in this arena. So if you are a content writer and if you have a zeal for writing, you can definitely come into this field. There is no hard and fast rule there. It's just that I would recommend get your basics down. It's important that you keep those in mind. Get your basics down. There are plenty of resources online. You can go ahead and try those out. There is this 15 days UX writing challenge. You can take that up. That is definitely going to revamp your writing skill. You can always revamp your writing skills. Get along with other UX writers or other content designers who are in this field, and then you can always go for internships and work, take projects, small
Mhm.
projects, and then you can start from there.
Yeah. I think basically you just have to have the rules in place because,
Yes,
like you
yes.
mentioned, content writing is in fact very different from UX copywriting, right? So
Right,
just make
right.
sure you, like how you mentioned, I think design process also you need to know so that you know
That
how to,
will actually help. Yes, yes.
it'll help you stay on track that you're a UX writer. Matthew has asked a very interesting question, and I'd love to know your thoughts as well, Sharmini. He has asked, when it comes to chatbots, for example, how much can we incorporate AI? So I think it is obviously not very practical to always have someone sit and like have like a live person on the other end of the computer typing in the queries of people, right? We have customer support for that. So chatbots are included on every single platform, but I think it should be used something like the cookies feature, where the AI recognizes your pattern of speech or the audience's pattern of speech and customize your text for them to understand and also understand the questions that they're asking. I think that comes over analyzing the data over a period of time of your users, and that way we definitely have to incorporate AI into your platform. But I think one way what would help, which would also help, is for you to phrase certain sentences from your audience feedback. So if you already have some feedback about the common questions, the FAQs of your audience, you can spend some time in thinking what is the best way to phrase it so that through chatbots also it's very easy for the user to understand and it doesn't sound too robotic. So that's what I
I
would
think
say.
AI has become really, it has become a very integral part of our lives, right? Uh,
Yeah.
Play a song, Siri, play a song, Siri, open this up, for example, right? So AI has become a very integral part of our lives, and it's going to grow in the coming years, right? So I think that it is, as you mentioned, that definitely we need to think through about how we can incorporate language in AI in such a way that it doesn't sound robotic, and it also fulfills the need of the users who are hopping onto the platform, right? But I think it's a useful feature. So as you mentioned earlier, that it's not possible for a person to sit and type and answer all the queries, because we can have thousands of queries coming in at this moment, right? So it,
Yeah.
it, it makes sense, but then again we'll have to think through it.
Yeah. Exactly. I hope that we have somehow answered that question.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
All right, I guess we have some more questions coming in, but I think that will go on. We are already way past our allotted time. So I think guys who have their questions unanswered, you can reach out to Sharmili and Devki Nandini on LinkedIn if I may, right? You
Yeah, yeah,
guys
sure, sure.
Okay, they'll be happy to answer your questions. You can connect to them. They're active on LinkedIn. So sorry if we couldn't answer your questions because it's already 8:30, and I think people must be getting hungry as well for dinner. So
Plus,
sorry.
it's a Saturday. Plus, it's a Saturday.
Hey, no,
First
it's a Thursday.
Oh,
day,
just
Sharmilee
joking,
is
just
in the
joking.
mood of partying, huh?
we'll
Well, you
plan.
deserve to party. It was a really, really great session, girls. It
Yeah,
was amazing. Even I enjoyed it. Very fun filled with all the questions and everything. So I think we can now conclude the session. If is there anything you both want to cover,
no,
or
I think
should
it was a great session. I think this is something. It's a pretty new vertical in India, especially people are not aware that UX writing is a vertical. So I think it's fairly very interesting, and I hope people have something. I think they'll have a lot to take back home from this webinar, and I'm really glad I got this chance to share this experience with Devki. So thank you so much, Devki.
Thanks a lot, Sharmili. And Shivani, thanks for having me on your Coditas webinar. It's I have met Sharmili through this, and I've met you as well.
it was
And
a pleasure.
thank you. Yeah. And it's I myself didn't know so many things from a UX writer's perspective, right? Because I've hardly worked with one in all the projects that I've done till date. So from this conversation with you guys, I have learned a lot as well. And I hope the audience has also learned from whatever we had to convey. Yeah, would you guys can absolutely reach out to either of us on any of the platforms. I'm sure it's very easy to for you all to find us. We have very long names. You can search very easily and reach out to us, and we'd be happy to get back to you and have a conversation as well. So thanks a lot, guys,
Yeah.
and thanks, Shivani, Shamili.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much. It
Thank you so
was a
much.
pleasure hosting you both. And yeah, Deepesh is saying side effects of work from home because Sharmili lost track of days. So yeah, Deepesh, you're right. All right, just one day to go for
I think I'd
Saturday.
like to add one more point.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd also like to add for all those, I'm sure most of the audience is definitely from Design Board as well. But for those who are not aware of Design Board, it is a UI UX school here headquartered in Bangalore. And we have online classes, offline, and everything, which takes you through 14 weeks of boot camp to understand what UX is, what UI is. And at the end of it, you get to make your solid portfolio as well and just jump into the industry as possible with all the knowledge in place. So do check out demo classes, which are there every Sunday, which will give you an idea of what UI UX is and what you're going to learn. So check them out. It's on the website, and you can check out the social media platforms as well for the timings and sessions. Yeah, just
Yeah.
that's about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the information. And thank you, audience, for joining us this evening. And as we have already mentioned, if you are a UX writer looking out for opportunities, we at Coditas are hiring. Check out our website. The links are also given in the comments. And we are also hiring across multiple verticals, so you can check it out on the same link. And also to stay connected with us, please follow us on social media. We are active on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We would love to stay in touch with all of you. And also do let us know how this webinar was for you, how informative it was by sharing your feedback. The link is again given in the comments. Thank you once again, everyone. Take care. Good night. Bye bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.